Hello and welcome to Express Sports Podcast. You're listening to Game Time. We have Amit Kamath with us today, so is Vinayakk Mohanarangan, and this is me, Mihir Vasavda. Today on our agenda is hockey. Well, I'll be the first one to admit that we are a bit late to hockey given the Hockey India League that is going on for the whole of January, and it's mid-Feb now that we are addressing that. But in a way, there couldn't be a perfect timing as well, because this weekend, India's women's and men's team resumed their international duty. The international season begins with the FIH Pro League in Bhubaneswar, a tournament that's also the 2026 World Cup qualifier. And for both teams, the men and women's teams, the ambitions and the goals couldn't be much more starker. So without further ado, we'll dive straight in. And first up, Vinayakk, because you were in Rourkela, you saw the Hockey India League up close and personal. I think it's apt we start from the Hockey India League because one thing rolls into another. Your impressions, it was a much needed boost for Indian hockey in both senses, right? For the men's team coming off from the second consecutive Olympic medal, for the women's team who are in a way starting from scratch and the league could be a boost for them. But what was it like in Rourkela?
Yeah, thanks, Mihir. So, Rourkela was ultimately fun. I think I spent the last week there for the last group matches, which were both decisive in terms of deciding who the semi-finalists were. It went down to the wire, so to speak. The semi-finals and finals, the finals day especially was jam-packed, and you've been to the Birsa Munda Stadium and it's already like a very imposing arena, and to see it full for the final was quite special for a domestic league match to have that kind of footfall. Of course, tickets are free and all that it's there, but I mean, to fill a 20,000 seater like that is still pretty incredible. Made for great atmosphere on the semi-finals and finals day. The one thing that I would say for both the men's and women's league in its inaugural edition was the fears that the matches might not be high quality, if there were any, before the tournament. I think those proved to be not misguided, but the matches were not of low quality. The consistently quite high quality matches, despite a lot of international stars pulling out, that we worried might, bring down the level of the league itself, which was a understandable fear. But that wasn't to be the case. So I think that was one of the biggest positives. There are issues around the league in terms of, the window, the organizational issues in terms of having just Rourkela as one venue for a month. Things like that. Purse, the international players, the sort of money that they're getting, despite still being sort of, the main prime movers in most of the teams, especially in the women's. So those are the issues that need to be addressed. And we've done a story as well on where the league can improve. But as far revivals go, it wasn't too bad. I think the signs are more positive than negative on the balance.
Amit, I'm keen to understand from your point of view this whole Hockey India League business, because I guess our listeners have some sense of how our profession works, where each of us follow a particular sport in depth and kind of, get stories out of it, write about it. And in that way, I think you are a little more detached from hockey from a very microscopic coverage point of view in the last few months. Were you caught up in the hype of Hockey India League? From your point of view, was Hockey India League actually hyped, huh?
Thanks, Mihir, for first of all using the word detached rather than clueless. That was smooth, subtle, whatever. Very well done. But I think, that was one of the things, because whatever we've seen from Vinayakk's reporting, right, we know that there were 20,000 people coming in at the Birsa Munda Stadium. There were instances where fans had to be turned away because there were no more seating. All of that was happening. But then away from that, I don't think there was too much buzz away from the traditional centers. Like, people who were interested in hockey, they would have been watching hockey. But for a sport to sustain itself, you need to keep thinking about newer audiences. Like, you mentioned that I was slightly not too focused on hockey. But see, that's the one thing that the sport that I actually do cover a lot, chess. They do think about this a lot. They do think about newer audiences. They do think about what can we do to make this sport more exciting for outsiders, right? And I think in that sense, chess mein thoda sa they have that advantage that they don't rely on television at all. Like, it's a sport that is completely on live broadcast, live stream, whatever, as in on YouTube. So they can do things with heart rate monitors. They can do things with commentary. If you listen to their commentary, sometimes it looks really, really bizarre because it's just two people singing songs and stuff like that. So everything that you can imagine has been experimented with in chess. So I think that is the next step that a sport like hockey or any other league that wants to pull in new audiences needs to do. The sport in itself is only going to attract so many people. You maybe need to do other things because, frankly, I think Doordarshan was supposed to be the initial broadcaster. Then I think Sony came in, if I'm not mistaken, and all of that, sure. But in terms of, I mean, obviously Vinayakk can speak to this, but in terms of getting newer audiences in the sport, did the league go a long way? I am not sure. I mean, obviously having a league in itself after 7 years, great achievement. I mean, we know that a lot of leagues, once they've shuttered, they've not really come back. Like you look at wrestling or whatever. But yeah, sure. So having a league in itself after 7 years, great deal. But then how do you get more people so that the league does not have to be shuttered again is the next big question, I guess.
That's a great point actually, the chess comparison that you make, right? क्योंकि मैं अभी जैसे I think Indian Open बैडमिंटन चल रहा था तभी someone on Twitter, one of the badminton handles, put out a very fascinating clip कि कैसे बैडमिंटन broadcast में innovation नहीं है, whereas in the Premier Badminton League, which again got shuttered for I mean, let's face it, very few sports have been able to sustain themselves financially like IPL is, and all the leagues are modeled on the IPL. And badminton was one of the sports that couldn't sustain. But the person put out a clip from the league, which I missed at that point. At least I don't remember watching it back then, but it showed real-time speed of the shots, the angles that the players were taking, and it made for a very fascinating viewership experience, you know. Hockey in the past has tried different rules to make the league more interesting. Given ki domestic competition hai, they take leeways with rules and stuff. And I think, yeah, is bar the focus was revival. Although the other thing that you said, right, the Doordarshan bit, and apart from the problem which a lot of players and the team owners and officials pointed out was that having all matches in Rourkela and Ranchi and showing it on Doordarshan wasn't the best way to kind of showcase the sport. You're limiting our audience. But I guess with time, hopefully that will change, because I don't know if this avatar of Hockey India League doesn't work, then what will? Because this is the third time India is trying a league. There was Premier Hockey League in, I think, 2004-05. Then the Hockey India League, which made World Series Hockey bhi aaya tha, which was a quote-unquote rebel tournament. And all of them couldn't sustain. So, agar jo ye fail ho jata hai, to you wonder what will be the solution. So that will be like a big problem. But Vinayakk, quality-wise, the matches were great, weren't they? I mean, from day one itself, it didn't look like it was a team that was assembled in October and the players got together 10 days before the first match. And I mean, they gelled pretty well. There were some fascinating moves and goals, and quality-wise, it was pretty solid.
Yeah, 100%. Just to add to what Amit was saying, I 100% agree with what he said in terms of the league not reaching out to more people. What he said is what I felt in terms of the buzz. It was just in the hockey sort of niche community that we have. People who sit and watch every match, people who analyze and wonder about team selections and things like that on a daily basis is not a huge community in India. I mean, we all say, you know, hockey is special, you know, our heart beats for hockey and all that. It sounds well for cliches, but it doesn't actually translate into a buzz, which was definitely missing. And I think Dilip Tirki, in an interview with a couple of us in Rourkela, the Hockey India president, admitted to that, which is a good sign, saying that, you know, yeah, we are aware the marketing wasn't great. That is something the franchises have told us. There has to be a better marketing in the lead up to the next year, because otherwise we are not reaching out to enough people. The product, Srijesh, when he had come to the Indian Express Idea Exchange, he had spoken about the product being marketed well, which is the quality of hockey is only a part of it, I feel, right? If you have 8 franchises in the men's league, are you reaching out to your home states? Is there a connect? A couple of franchises I thought did that well on social media, but was it enough? I don't know. And the broadcast, my goodness. I mean, I kind of reined myself in when I wrote that what needs to improve for the next year. But my God, if they don't improve the broadcast qualities, then yeah, I don't know how it will reach out to more people. Official partner was Doordarshan. Sony just came in to pick up the DD feed. That is one thing that I'd like to add. It was Doordarshan doing the production, and it was just horrible. Like the camera cuts. I mean, if you're not at the ground, if you're watching it on TV, I don't know if you watch one day's matches and you'll be tuning in for the next day. It was that bad. Like, honestly, if someone is just tuning in.
But it was impossible to kind of follow the action as well on TV. Like, it was very tough, yeah.
Exactly. No? Yeah. Right, yeah. The zoom-ins when, the wider angle is showing the play and then they suddenly, when the players enter the circle, they cut into a zoom and you end up missing what happens inside the circle. It's like clearly someone who didn't know what a hockey broadcast looks like was doing the production. And for a league that is running over 1 month and in one city, if you're trying to attract people from elsewhere, how are you going to do it, right? I mean, this was also told by a couple of officials from the franchises who didn't want to be named. But there is already an understanding that this is not good enough. If the broadcast doesn't match the quality of hockey, then there is no point in saying the matches are high quality because it's only the few people in the stadium who are going to enjoy it.
Yeah, true. So these teething issues, of course, we hope these will be teething issues because, well, Amit, we saw the impact of Hockey India League on Indian hockey, the men's hockey team. 2013-14 में league वापस आई and by 16, a lot of junior players who were in the squads didn't necessarily play all the time, but who were in the squads, they went on to win the Junior World Cup. And then those players formed the core of the Indian team that returned to the Olympic podium after 30, 40 years, went on to repeat that feat in Paris again. So the impact of that league was tangible. We could actually see it. And in that sense, the return of Hockey India League comes at a very crucial stage, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, I mean, Mihir, for a lot of these players, getting to rub shoulders with some of the legends of the game from abroad and to have, just a frank idea exchange as teammates, that also kind of helps. So right now, we are not at a stage where, maybe 2 Olympics ago, probably our youngsters would have been like, they would have looked at all these other Belgian stars or maybe the Germans or the Australians and looked at them and felt that, these guys are something, they are like whatever, gods or something. They're slightly more than humans. That at least is not there because now we are also 2-time bronze medalists in last 2 Olympics. So that thing is kind of, at least that veneer has kind of faded away, at least a little. So that to nahi hai. But then now what has happened is, at least with the Hockey India League, if you are, let's say, sharing a dressing room with somebody like a Vincent Van Asch, you kind of get to pick on his mind. You kind of get to ask him questions. You kind of, even if you are not, let's say, somebody is a goalkeeper and you are a drag flicker, you still get to talk to him, sit next to him, ask him, when I am taking a drag flick against you, what are you thinking? Obviously, you may not tell him all of your secrets. But then at some point that barrier has kind of come down. We'll see in the next few years how that kind of helps us.
Amit, it's interesting because a lot of cases this time were actually about young Indian players looking up to the senior Indian players. Jabi, for example, 10 saal pehle, it was a case of someone like Manpreet Singh looking up to Moritz Fuchs of Germany. And this time you had a dozen young Indian players looking up to Manpreet himself. Or as Vinayakk had written in one of his pieces, even established India players, the drag flicker Jugraj Singh, हम हमेशा joke करते थे कि basically when Jugraj Singh takes a drag flick, we used to joke that a goal की width 1 feet और बढ़ा दो because he always shoots wide. And what he saw in Hockey India League is impeccable accuracy. And like Vinayakk figured out, it was one of the key reasons was the tips he got from Rupinder Pal Singh, the former India drag flicker, who retired, stayed fit, and played in this season's Hockey India League along with Jugraj and helped him improve as a drag flicker. Vinayakk.
Yeah, and Harmanpreet also. Jugraj made it a point to mention that, I've been watching a lot of Harmanpreet videos. And he flicked low a lot, which is, I think, a little bit of Colin Batch's influence. He said, I don't like my flickers flicking high. I want them to flick low. And we saw almost all of Jugraj's goals, especially the hat-trick in the final. All 3 were flicked very low and, kind of the awkward height to say for the goalkeepers. Jugraj Singh, I think, was the biggest positive to emerge for Indian hockey from the league itself. That is worth a mention. For me, the most pleasing aspect of the league was the youngsters not looking overawed by the senior core. That they've rubbed shoulders. When India beat Australia in Paris, I remember you had said, the Fulton felt that, we had lost that fear factor. Like, we didn't look up to Australia thinking, oh my God, like we always lose to Australia. That for the senior group, core group, that is not there anymore. The juniors, there were a lot of impressive names, I thought, who didn't seem overawed by playing in front of 20,000 fans. A few names worth mentioning, like Tufans especially. Like, I personally was hoping the Tufans would win the tournament because of the way they built the squad. A lot of young Indian domestic talent. They scouted really well. And Amandeep Lakra is one who's not made it to the Pro League squad, but he is from Rourkela and he learnt a lot from Gonzalo Payat. Like you said, what Manpreet did with Moritz Fiose. I heard that, Amandeep Lakra sat down with Gonzalo Payat and like they went hours and hours watching PC videos of where the angles are and like, how to exploit what the first runners are doing. And to learn from Payat for a 21-year-old, that's nothing like it, right? And Amandeep Lakra is one example. Harshdeep Singh is a guy who has made it to the squad from the Tufans team. He could feature in one of the Pro League matches coming up. He said how he learned a lot about finishing from Jacob Anderson. So things like that. So it's a mix. And I think the youngsters doing well across almost all 8 franchises. There were bright spots from the non-core group senior team. So that was really pleasing to watch. And I think just moving a little forward, I think what the women's and men's team do in the Pro League, I would be keen to watch some of these names, how they are improving in the next 10 days or so. I think 8 matches for both the teams. I'll be looking forward to see, especially the women's team, if there is a little more swag about them, sort of an aura that they have gained from being part of this slightly miniaturized version of the Hockey India League. We all, like you said, we all know what the men's team gained from the previous edition of Hockey India League. If that can happen for the women's team, then nothing like it. I think that is one of the things that I'd be looking forward to the Pro League, which I hope you have fun attending. Looking forward to what those 8 matches show us.
Vinayk, because you've seen the sport now, you've seen the league come back, and Mihir, you also from your vantage point. Just wanted to understand, for all these franchises, now that the league is done, is there like a long-term plan in terms of how do you tap into your catchment areas? As you mentioned just now, Vinayk, one of the teams had scouted really well. But what are the teams doing now that the league is over? Or is it like shut up operations and then next time jab auctions aayega tab dekha jayega? Is that sort of a thing happening? Because then it's just like a Netflix OTT show, right? You just turn up 1 saal ke baad next season aata hai, tabhi aap aa jate ho. Otherwise, there's nothing happening with the franchise as a whole. There's no continuation in a sense. You are not trying to do anything to tap into your catchment areas and trying to get those grassroots activated in a sense.
Yeah, they have to. I mean, I hope they do. Like Srijesh, again, going back to that idea exchange that he had visited our office for, we asked him this, like, what is the end goal? And he said, he's the director/mentor at Delhi SG Pipers. And he said, our plan is to set up academies and hopefully, maybe 2-3 years down the line, have players from our academy, drafted into our, the HAL squad. That is the aim and that is what we want to achieve. So if they're planning on doing that, then obviously then the off period is where they need to do a lot of this stuff. I hope it's not like just wait for the next auctions and then prepare. It's a good probably story to do maybe 2 months down the line, see what the franchises are up to. One of the things that I noticed was Tamil Nadu Dragons, for example, after the league has ended, they are still posting videos from the Pro League of, Nathan Ephraim's, who was in their squad, what he is doing in the Pro League. Great assist, look at this. And they posted something on the national games, Karnataka players who won gold, the players from the Dragon squad, they're, kind of keeping the sort of momentum going. Appreciate. This is what we do see with the IPL social media, right? For example, like Delhi Capitals are not like sitting and doing nothing when the IPL is not going on or the WPL is not going on. They post about their players doing elsewhere internationally and all that. So Dragons are doing that. I hope more people keep the social media engagement going. That is also important because you need to reach out to the right sort of people. But yeah, the franchises themselves must think, grassroots, I guess, in the off season.
No, and that's something even Sardar Singh, the former India captain, mentioned. So I think it was kind of refreshing, his approach towards hockey coaching. So he, like many other recently retired Indian players, has shifted to coaching. And he said his aim isn't to be the senior team coach. He wants to work with players in the age group of 12 to 15, 16 years, develop young players. And he is the mentor of the Surma Hockey Club, and they have started a program in Punjab and Haryana. So a lot of junior work, he said, will be going on over there. And it will be interesting because Sardar, by his own adventure/enterprise, he is planning to go to the Netherlands, spend some time with a couple of clubs over there. He mentioned Bloemendaal, hopefully, because he played for them 10 years ago. So, just understand how the Dutch youth system works and get some of those ideas over here and implement it. So the next auction is going to happen, I think, after 2 more years. The auction's every 3 years as of now. So you can't wait till then. You need to build your squad, you need to kind of improvise, and unless, the grassroots, like Vinayak mentioned, develop, and it's not going to kind of get you any long-term gains. So we'll see how that goes, Ismay. But that's long term. Short term, it will be interesting because
Mir, just to add one thing, so this was one of the things that all the chess league, the global chess league, right? So usme all the franchises realized at some point that aapka leagues are happening in Dubai or for London or whatever. So which means for a franchise, even if you're called a Ganges Grandmasters, there is no real connect to Indian audiences in that sense, because all your players will be foreigners. You are playing abroad, so you don't have to do too much activation in that sense, right? So what these guys started doing is, unka jo fan club tha, they started hosting chess tournaments for their fans. So if you're somebody who plays slightly decent chess and you are a part of the fan club of Ganges Grandmasters or whatever franchise there is, you play amongst yourselves and then you are crowned champions. So those sorts of things is what the chess league is doing, just to make sure that even if you have nothing to do physically with the league, you can't actually go and watch matches, you are still invested in the franchise in a sense. So, I mean, that is what I was trying to understand. Ki are teams kind of doing those sorts of things just to make sure ki next league jab aayega, to the Surma ya fir whatever, we'll have people actually buying their jerseys. We'll actually have kids buying their jerseys in the region that they're supposed to be based out of, even if all the matches are happening in Odisha.
It'll be worth following how that progress goes. I guess this time it was a very short notice for everyone. October, the teams were announced. December, the league started. So now they'll have time, full 12 months to build up to the league. So we'll see how that goes. So I think we should start wrapping up, and good segue in a way to get into the Pro League matches, because the Pro League, which until this time was a very glorified exhibition tournament, has suddenly gained some relevance with it being a Hockey World Cup qualifier. The World Cups in Netherlands and Belgium simultaneously for both men and women next year. And of course, this is the first step for the teams to qualify. Those who don't qualify, I think the top 5, if I'm not wrong, Vinayakk can correct me if I'm wrong, the top 5 will get places in the next year's World Cup. If not, you can go through your continental championships. That's another route as well. But speaking to Savita, Vinayakk, the Indian women's team goalkeeper, the former captain, and she mentioned, how this time they are hoping that the Hockey India League impact, which we saw on the men's team, will have on the women's side. She's kind of seeing a lot of young India players, the swagger that you mentioned, the confidence that you mentioned, walk within the team with that confidence, picking up chota tips from the international players, and suddenly some of the international players who were teammates are suddenly your opponents. So that's an interesting dynamic as well when the league begins. Women's team, for them, I think it will be a task to kind of get back their mojo after missing out on the Olympics and not doing so well at the last season's Pro League. For the men's team, I guess it's more of experimenting with the squad. Fulton trying to get again his best 24 players. And Harendra has already said that, Harendra Singh's the women's team coach, he's already said that he's trying to get a group of 24 players with whom he can focus up to the World Cup. So that'll be interesting to see, Vinayakk.
Yeah, different sort of things that they're preparing towards. For the men's, it's about maintaining some sort of consistency while adding some young blood, or at least I desperately hope so. Because... I don't want to name names, but we do joke about how we've had a few sort of, I wouldn't say passengers, but a few players who are not at their best when it comes to goal scoring, especially. We need someone to push them from the younger group. But that's like a very small thing that Fulton has to figure. I mean, also the goalkeeping is one of the things that we'll keep an eye on for the men's team. So not too many major issues to fix, but it'll be interesting to see where he bloods the youngsters in. I'm thinking the forward line is where we'll see a fair chunk of experimentation in terms of maybe Arijit getting more sustained run in the team, Arshdeep, who impressed in the Hockey India League. Some young names coming up, I hope, keep the seniors on their toes. For the women, it's completely different. I mean, where they stand, of course, the Asian Champions Trophy in Rajgir was a decent outing for Harendra Singh's side. I mean, not the biggest test in terms of the opponent quality. So that will completely change now. This is his first real test, because last time he was in the Pro League scheme of things, he hadn't really had enough time with the squad and they basically didn't consider them to be serious matches. So yeah, the women's team is a complete, I think that's where more of our interest, like both you and I know that, that's where I think the stories are going to be, whether they are on the right track again, whether they can bounce back, is something to keep an eye on. So the women's team is something I'll be keeping a close eye on over the next 10 days or so to see where they're at. Also, just one thing, it's only one spot in the Pro League winners who qualify for the World Cup.
Oh, well, I knew you'd correct me because I always mess up these kind of scenarios and stuff.
Qualification quotas are.
Yeah, 100%. So
they keep changing it every time, man. So, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. I think that's all we have for this week's episode. Just a slight change of plan for us. We'll be perhaps doing away with the usual game time episodes and do more Champions Trophy specials as the Champions Trophy begins in Pakistan and for India in Dubai this week. It starts on February 19. So we'll come up with a few specials from there. Our colleague Venkata Krishna B will be on ground in Dubai. So perhaps he'll be chipping in as well with his observations. So do watch out for that on your feeds. Thank you for listening. We'll be back with the Champions Trophy episodes pretty soon. Thanks again.
You were listening to Express Sports by the Indian Express. This week's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.